Katie here, and it is time once again to talk about Shadowhunters. So episode 17, A Dark Reflection. I feel like there were a lot of really great scenes in this episode, and there was also some drama between certain characters as well. I'm going to start by talking about Valentine and Sebastian, everything that's going on with them. Basically, this episode has them starting to work together. Sebastian is on board with Valentine's plan to get rid of the downworld, create this new and perfect world that he has in mind. We see the two of them with the soul sword, and they are trying to get Cleophas to fix it after Clary deactivated it in the previous half of the season. Very glad that we got to see Cleophas in this episode, because I had been wondering what had gone on with her. With Shadowhunters, things happen and then all of a sudden they're dropped for a lot of episodes and you don't know where they are or what's going on. So I was definitely pleased to see her in this episode. She can't get the sword to work again. She explains how great Clary's power is. She was really able to mess up that sword. This is when Valentine brings up the plan that Valentine had in the books as well, which is to unite all the mortal instruments and raise the angel Raziel, even though Cleophas mentions the fact that no one has been able to do that and that it was just a myth. Valentine is determined. He wants that wish. So we're definitely sticking to the main plot of City of Glass at the moment. Of course, Valentine and Sebastian don't know where the mortal mirror is, so they need to find that. They end up going to see a warlock called Elliot. Sebastian drops in at his very nice shop. Elliot has a mark on him that show where this mortal mirror is. We find out that Jocelyn entrusted him with this information. Even when they're torturing him, Elliot refuses to say anything. So before they can take him away to get that information out of him some other way, he ends up killing himself. This mark that he has ends up transferring to another trusted warlock. That warlock happens to be Dot. Can I just say, poor Dot, she has been through so much in this series. Honestly, I'm still surprised that she's alive at this point. Pretty sure she's not after this episode, but she survived other things, so honestly, who knows? But every time she is getting back on track, something else goes wrong in her life, and I just feel so sorry for her. So she shows up at the Institute with this mark. They know that something has happened to Elliot, so Clary and Jace go to his shop to investigate. I was really happy to see Clary and Jace working together again in this episode. I also loved the very start of the episode when Clary was having a nightmare about being trapped in the lake. Jace rushes in to assure her that she's okay. I appreciated the subtlety of that scene with the two of them holding hands and Jace just being there for Clary. We're not moving too quickly towards Clace, but you can see that there is still something there between them and we are building up to a more romantic relationship between them. So I like the way Clace was built throughout this episode. The scene where they are in Elliot's shop was brilliant because Sebastian arrives whilst the two of them are there investigating. At the start of the episode, when Clary was talking about Jonathan being out there, she said that she wanted to find him, and you can see straight away that Jace is doubting whether that's the right thing to do. When they're at the shop and she sees that the flowers are dead, she knows from a memory of her mother's that that is what Jonathan does. So she immediately knows that this is down to Jonathan. And of course, Sebastian is there. He shows up to help. So he's standing there and hears this argument that Clary and Jace have regarding Jonathan. And even though it was a serious talk, the look on Sebastian's face just made me laugh so much. Because Jace is literally just bitching him out and saying that he wouldn't hesitate to kill him whilst he's standing right there. Also, while we're talking about Sebastian, I just want to mention that I really love how they go from him being his demon-burnt self to him being Sebastian. That little flamey transition thing that happens, I think it looks really cool. I'm always saying that I think the effects can be hit and miss in shows like this, but this particular one I think works really well. So I'm liking this two sides to the way he looks. But back to this conversation that Clary and Jace are having. Clary, being that good and lovely person that she is, still believes that there is some human part of her brother that she will be able to save. Whereas Jace just completely doesn't believe that. Sebastian standing there and hearing the way that Jace talks about wanting him dead. That clearly panics him. When he meets up with Valentine after that scene, he has a little bit of a meltdown. He starts to get very angry and determined to make Clary like him. That faith that Clary has in him, despite not knowing that she's ever met him. He doesn't want to lose that. And that scene in the street when he starts shouting at Valentine about how he can't let Jace get in his way and how he needs Clary to care for him. I love that you could see how much that intimidated Valentine, because at first he was basically telling him to get a grip on himself, that didn't matter, but then the angrier Sebastian got and the black demon eyes appearing, Valentine completely switches and starts saying that he's right. That scene was weird, but a good weird, because we get to see this strange possessiveness that Sebastian has for his sister. That's definitely starting to show a lot more as the episodes go on. Back at the Institute, Sebastian sees that Dot is the one with the mark now. He goes to see Clary before they go off to find out where the mortal mirror is. He starts talking about the conversation that Clary and Jace had whilst they were in the shop. He starts questioning Clary about her brother and waits for her to confirm that she would try and save him if she could. After she says that, he kisses her. I know that this is what Sebastian does in the books because he's creepy and he goes after his sister in that way. Part of me was holding on to the very slim hope that the show would just avoid that side of it. But it's pretty clear now that they're not going to avoid that. They're going to go down that road of having Sebastian love his sister a little bit too much. I already feel sorry for Clary when she finds out who Sebastian actually is. Yikes. Anyway, after that very awkward and uncomfortable moment, Sebastian takes one of Clary's hair bobbles to track her. So he tracks Clary, Jace and Dot to the park. The scene where Dot could see the lines of the mark on the floor of the park. I love the way that looked. I thought that was a really cool thing to add in. It leads her over to this statue where she is able to take a little compact mirror. Sebastian is there. He appears in his true form. We have this really great scene between Clary and Jonathan, Sebastian, whatever you want to call him. This is the first time that she thinks that she's come face to face with her actual brother. I love how gentle that she was in this scene, because throughout the episode she's been saying that she wants to be able to save him if she can. You actually see her put that into effect in this moment, and you can see that she's serious about it. She truly does want to help him. So she tries to tempt him to come home with them. She assures him that they can help him, and you can see as he's holding the sword to Jace that he does consider it, because at the end of the day he does love Clary. But then Dot interferes and manages to push Sebastian away from Jace. She opens a portal and Clary and Jace reluctantly go through and have to leave her there. So poor Dot is left with Sebastian. I can only assume that he's killed her, but honestly at this point who knows what Dot's fate is, because I keep thinking she's dead and then she keeps reappearing, so nothing is certain. Back at the Institute, Clary looks at the mirror and gets a vision of her in the lake with the swords coming towards her. So I can only assume that this is leading towards them knowing that the lake is the mortal mirror. So let's talk about Simon and Izzy in this episode. Simon goes to Jade Wolf and tries to ask Maya out on a date. After the moments that they had in the previous episode when Maya came to dinner, he thinks that their relationship is moving in a certain direction and he plans for this really romantic date for them. But when he asks Maya, she turns him down. Later on in the episode, we get some great scenes between Simon and Izzy. Simon is helping Izzy train Max. So let's talk about Izzy for a second. In this episode, Izzy finds out that Max is to go on his first mission. She really isn't happy about this. She gets pretty defensive about it with Alec and starts talking about how he isn't ready. But Alec has to remind her that they were that age when they started to get sent out on the field. Now that Max has his runes, it's what he has to do as a Shadowhunter. I love the fierce protectiveness that Izzy has over Max, and we got to see that a lot in this episode. So I really appreciated the scenes that we got between the two of them. We also see her teaching Max how to track properly. Maybe she teaches him a little bit too well, because by the end of the episode, he's not just tracking pigeons. So she has to accept that Max is to start going out on missions because she thinks he's not ready yet, starts doing extra training with him and has him tracking Simon. I really loved the little bond the three of them had in this episode. Simon was absolutely adorable with Max. And what I like about Simon and Izzy at the moment in the show is that they just have this really genuine friendship. We know obviously that later on in the show there will be romance between them, but I'm glad that the show is focusing on building their friendship rather than adding in romantic tension too soon. At the moment, I feel comfortable with them the way they are. I don't have to start worrying about any romance drama. Whilst the three of them are taking a break at Jade Wolf, we have a great conversation between Simon and Izzy. Izzy opens up about her fears with regards to Max. Simon is the one to remind her that Max is a Shadowhunter and that's what he's supposed to do. So they go off to train some more. But as they're walking out, Maya walks in. Even though she rejected Simon's offer of a date, you can immediately tell that she is a little bit jealous when she sees Simon with Izzy. And we get that snappy remark from her when she asks whether Simon is taking Izzy out on the boat. This is Izzy's first time meeting Maya properly. And even though Izzy has just met her, she knows that something more is going on with Maya. When they get outside Jade Wolf, she's the one to tell Simon that it's not that Maya doesn't like him, it's that there's something more going on and that she's clearly had her heart broken. But because of all the drama that Simon's had with Clary, he doesn't want to push anything that's going to get him nowhere. So Izzy goes back to talk to Maya. I loved this scene between the two of them because it shows that Izzy just wants happiness for Simon. I love the way she hyped him up to Maya. You go, Izzy, you hype up Simon, he needs it. And she tries to get Maya to open up a little bit to her, but Maya is pretty defensive, and obviously she's just met Izzy, so she's not going to tell Izzy her life story. But I like that we're starting to talk about this big heartbreak that Maya's had in her past, because we know we're going to get that storyline at some point. So I like that it's building the foundations of it now. And this talk that Izzy had with Maya obviously changes Maya's mind, because she shows up at the end of the episode and speaks more openly to Simon. She doesn't say exactly what has hurt her in the past, but she does explain to him that she's wary of relationships and doesn't want to go too quickly. So I really like the way that their part in this episode was concluded. I just think they're really cute. Also, yay for Maya becoming a series regular. I was just saying last week that I wanted more Maya in the show. I'm going to get more Maya in the show, so I'm really excited about that. Back to Max. This episode definitely focused more on him than we have done in the past, so obviously I was stressed. The more it focuses on Max, the more stressed I get. And I had good reason to be stressed, because at the end of the episode, we find out that he has been tracking a little too well. He has been tracking a single hair, and now knows that Sebastian is Jonathan. I mean, yay for Max being so clever and being the first one to figure this out. That's great. Good work for a 12-year-old. However, I know where this is going to end up, so I'm not okay with it. In the slightest. I mean, you know, at least we're being prepared. We're definitely leading to that storyline. I was fearing that it was going to just happen really quickly in this episode, but it didn't, so there's more time to prepare emotionally, but I still don't want that storyline to happen. Honestly, if the show writers decide that they would like to go a different direction from the books completely and not have that certain tragic thing happen, I would support them completely in that. I know that event gives us character development for the other Lightwoods and all this other stuff. It's kind of necessary, but is it really? I mean, we can totally just skip it, it's fine. I'm proud of Max, but at the same time, I just wanted to scream, Max! No! So, another big thing that happened in this episode, the dreaded Malik drama. Woo! Honestly, I knew drama was on its way. In this episode, we had this lovely scene where Magnus brings dinner to Alec. Alec is very stressed out at the moment, naturally. Magnus has been having a Downwelder meeting in the Seelie court with Luke. It went well, no fights broke out. Magnus wants to celebrate a little. Alec forgets to show up to dinner because of how stressed he is, but Magnus understands. He brings dinner to Alec. They have this lovely romantic table and they're just having such a nice dinner. And then they're talking about being open and honest. You could just see Alec's little face at the end there, that he was thinking about that little bit of information about the soul sword. In this episode, Cleophas manages to temporarily escape and she sends a quick fire message to Luke. Luke shares this information with Magnus. So now the two of them know that the Clave doesn't have the soul sword like they said they did. And Magnus is convinced that Alec didn't know because he thinks that Alec would have told him. So then he goes to confront Alec. This scene was just pain, really. I knew that the Malik drama was coming, but honestly, I still wasn't ready for it. I hated how obviously hurt Magnus was in this scene. You could see him get angry in a way that we don't normally see. He was very severe and blunt with Alec. He wasn't prepared to listen to any explanation that Alec could give to him. He also mentions the fact that he told Alec things he'd never told anyone before, and Alec still lied to him after that. Obviously he is referring to himself opening up about his past, and he leaves Alec on bad terms in that scene. Later on, when we see him back in his apartment with Luke, he's definitely very angry. He ends up lashing out a little bit with his magic. Luke was brilliant in this scene because he was really trying to calm him down and assure him that Alec meant no harm by not telling Magnus straight away. Because you can see that although Luke might not fully trust the Clave, he does trust Alec. And Luke knows that Alec is just trying to do his best. His intentions are good. And I like that he tried to remind Magnus of that. But Magnus is still quite riled up. And now he wants to tell the Seelie Queen about everything that's been going on with the Clave. I mean, this really isn't going to go down well. Obviously Magnus is very protective over the Downworld and doesn't want any harm to come to it. But would he really trust the Seelie Queen with this information? I don't know. We'll see what happens there. Again, we didn't really get to see much of Luke in this episode, apart from his scenes with Magnus, which were really great, but they were also really short. However, now that Luke knows that Cleophas is alive, I am thinking that we're going to have some sort of reunion between them at some point before the end of this season, because I feel like this storyline between him and his sister isn't finished yet, and I feel like there is more to it that we need to see. So that is about all I can think of to talk about at the moment. Anything else from this episode that you would like to discuss, then feel free to leave it down in the comments. I am completely terrified about next week's episode because the promo doesn't look great for Max. So I'm going to try and prepare myself for the worst. I will be back here next week to talk about that episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye!